And we're back with some more oxygen not included. And today is not a standard episode. Today I just want to go over an awful lot of stuff that sort of went on in the background while we were getting to this point in the game, and I sort of skimped over because, well, other things were more important at the time. And there was an awful lot of that in the first 100 cycles of this game. But the first thing up is this manual airlock here made out of uranium ore and its effect on food poisoning. Jumping back in time a bit, here's our fridge before we installed it, and you'll see there's little bits of food poisoning here on, oh, that's 1600 germs, but there's a little bit of food poisoning on a lot of these foods. It happens occasionally when your cook gets some germs on them due to something unanticipated, like them touching something germy, like say grabbing water from this pitcher pump, or there's lots of ways it can happen. But this results in a little bit of random food poisoning happening now and then, and it's not the end of the world, but it is kind of annoying. So instead what we can do here is build ourselves a manual airlock out of uranium. Now we can just chuck that in there. We're going to throw it down sideways. And now what this does is it radiates the whole area, and oh yeah, it's not going to show up for a minute, but let's have a quick look at this. Where's that one with 1600 food poisoning germs? There we go. Now let's keep an eye on this as we unfreeze time, and we'll actually put the time down to the slowest possible. And there you can see all the germs are starting to evaporate. And almost all gone. And done. No more germs left in any of the food. Oh, this one here has some. This one is actually further out on the edge. You can see there's sort of a radiation field, so the edge one there is only getting 11 rads. But still, there's no worry about germs anymore. They get killed off almost instantly. And this was all for the cost of 200 uranium ore. That is so handy. Now, I did try using this underneath the liquid reservoir that had lots of polluted water, which germs don't bother with that. Trying to clean out polluted water with radiation is just pointless. So early on in the game, before you get access to deep freezes that would kill the germs anyway, this is just a handy way of getting rid of all the germs on your food for like such a tiny amount of cost, assuming of course you've got uranium ore readily available. And actually talking about that, one thing that was suggested is we should drill a hole into space and let the radiation flow down here into this tank. Let's see what would happen if we had it done that. Well, if we dig all of that out, the radiation can now flow down pretty much uninterrupted. It's 375, but we got to put something to stop it, and the best we could find was mafic rock, or ceramic. And that means the rads come all the way down here and start hitting the water. But as you can see, it's dissipated so badly by the time it gets down here, it's doing almost nothing. It'll kill the stuff in the carbon dioxide, hopefully, pretty handily. But outside of that, you're not really going to do much, especially considering how much rads the water absorbs. You're only going to get the top few layers. Nice idea, but trying to use radiation to get rid of germs inside polluted water just doesn't happen. The polluted water recovers just too quickly. Now going even further back in time to cycle 30. Now this is when we were in the midst of a horrible labour shortage crisis. The reason comes down to the Locavore achievement. Locavore requires you to basically get a whole bunch of calories, but without using any planter boxes, farm tiles, or hydroponic tiles. Which, yeah, that's great. You can also use meat. Meat doesn't count either, so theoretically you could do it by, eating carnivore stuff, and it counts towards the carnivore achievement as well. However, we had a problem. Anything we turned into meat was more critters we couldn't actually ranch up for later meat, which meant we sort of ended up living on mush bars, and you get caught in this horrible spiralling loop of just no labour. If we look at our priorities here, under cooking, Leonard and Mads, they just have maxed out cooking. That's their job. That's all they do all day long is just cook. They don't have time for anything else. Maybe we can find a few pieces of wild food around the place, and that stuff we bring back, but that's barely just keeping us in the green, which means 2 duplicants are pretty much, that's all they do. That's their entire day gone. Then, before we got this little hydrogen generator up and running, we needed someone running on the manual generator to keep these things powered. Problem is, these things take 60 and 240 watts, and if you want to do research, well, that takes another 180, or, 60 to 120, depending on what's being used. And that's if you've got a researcher active. So if you have a researcher active and you're cooking, you still need a 4th dupe to run the manual generator. That leaves you with 2 duplicants left over. Also, one of them should probably be going around to do the farming and such like, and doing the wild crop, but that's a part-time job. But what that means is, for 6 duplicants, you have 2 free duplicants to run around the map and build and create stuff, which really, really hamstrings you from doing just about anything. It's why we were frantically scrabbling to get this up and running, and we were scrambling to get this power generator in place so that it would take the edge off. Putting in that power generator saved us about half or 3/4 of a duplicant in terms of labour, which freed it up to help with the construction projects elsewhere. If you were trying to hit the local Locavore or carnivore achievement, and people say put it on ravenous hunger, it makes things easier. No. If this was on normal difficulty, these 2 duplicants producing food would produce enough calories to support 12 duplicants. Not 6, it would double the amount they could support. Which means we would have, 8 duplicants running around able to build stuff? I mean, right now, our labour is so tight that I looked at this down here. This was mealwood or meal lice, and it actually had wild harvested itself. And this is 600 calories. The problem is I can't come in from the top to grab it because this water is actually what we're using for our mush fries. And if we dig down here, that water will fall down and we'll have to travel all the way over here to get water for our mush fries, which will cripple us. So we can't come in from the top. Now, we could come in from the side here, as in we could dig across here, put in some ladder segments. Maybe we'd have to do a little bit of sneaking down through this section, but we could get in there. The thing is, in the time it takes our duplicants to build the ladder segments across, to excavate this place out and get to the meal lice that gives us 600 calories, these two, well, one of these guys could actually knock out a whole mush fry bar, which would give us more calories anyway. So it would actually cost us more time and effort to get to those calories than if we just cooked up some more. That's how tight the labor is right now. It's incredible when you're at this level of the game. It feels like you're just scrambling to not die. Another thing that was recommended was, in the difficulty, we should have turned off the option to get care packages in the printing pod. That would make things more difficult because we couldn't get the odd random bit of food. Personally, I like leaving it on because it adds a little bit of fun to what comes out of the printing pod. If you know it's just going to be duplicates, it's not the same level of excitement when you go to open it up. As well as that, they like to turn off the teleporters. You can set up the starting scenario so there's no teleporters on your planet, and literally what you get is what you start with. So imagine starting on this planet with nothing but the resources here, no way to teleport over to the other planet and get more metals. It's incredibly difficult, I would say. As well as that, there's an awful lot of aluminum ore on this planet. This meant we couldn't even put in a ladder system. We couldn't afford it. We have, 1.7 tons of aluminum ore left, and we have to make incubators. And we have to make a lot of incubators. If you remember, I think we ended up going up to about 30 incubators. Each one of these is actually incredibly expensive. Yep, that's 200 refined metal. To refine that metal, we had to smash it up because we don't have a metal refinery, and smashing it up means we have to take 400 ore to turn it into one incubator. That means you need 12 tons of aluminum ore to make all of those. We don't even have that much on the planet. Well, okay, we have about just that much, but then you also have to put in the wiring, and you need it for other projects like the doors and such like. Just, we were so strapped for ore that we couldn't even put in a fire pole. That's how bad things were. Another suggestion was we should replace the floors and actually put in tiles. Now, normally, I don't do that. The reason I don't put in the tiles is I figure later on when I'm tidying up the place, I'll just replace the tile there, and then when I do, that dirt will fall down, and of course we've got insta-build on, so that's not the case. But they pointed out the run speed bonus, the plus 25% run speed bonus, I think that used to be 15%. But anyway, a plus 25% run speed bonus might actually be worth it at this stage. You know, you can do the sweeping up later when things become less frantic, and that's not nearly as important. So that might be a change I should have done. Floor the place, and especially in the high traffic area, so that my duplicants could run faster. This is cycle 30, and we're starting to actually build out our ranching section. You can see we've got a hatchling egg being incubated, and we've got 2 hatches, though one of them's about to age out. This is too late. I started way too late on this, and we almost didn't hit the carnivore achievement because of that. As well as that, because of our sort of chronic labour shortages, even when we do knock out the Locavore achievement, we've got to slowly build up the food, as in planter pots, and plant the mealwood, and then wait 3 cycles to harvest. It slows us down so much, those crippling labour costs. I should have actually printed those hatchling eggs that came out earlier, but whatever. You live and you learn. The only thing that saved us was the Pacu. Now, this here has nothing to do with this playthrough. It's just, you know, I shamelessly at some point had wanted to talk about this, so I'm just going to throw it in here because this seems like a good episode as any to do it. This here is your regular self-powered oxygen maker, otherwise referred to as, this is the Rodriguez design, and this is the one I did a tutorial on God knows how long ago. And this down here looks disturbingly similar and would also probably be referred to as a Rodriguez design. But you'll notice that there's a slight difference. There's a little cap on top. This one has a little bit of extra space at the top. And there's a reason for that, because when I was testing these, actually, this here is the Immigrant link to the design I was sent that I ended up modifying that eventually ended up being called the Rodriguez. Simply because Rodriguez sent it on to me, and I think they deserve the credit for coming up with the design, because I was smashing my head off a brick wall trying to figure out how to get 3 kilos of oxygen out of one of these. Now, the reason this is important, or it was the holy grail at the time, was when it comes to these electrolyzers, they give off hydrogen as well. So you can see there's 112 grams of hydrogen coming off this. So once you've got 4 of these in here, that's about 448 grams of hydrogen, which means only one gas pump can take it out. If you put in a 5th electrolyzer, you're going to have more hydrogen than one gas pump can handle. This is why this is sort of the top end of the design, is that you can't really go much bigger than this without putting in a 2nd hydrogen gas pump. But anyway, that's not where we're here. Where we're here is because, why is their design, you'll notice their gas pump is actually down here and flat across the top. This one is actually up top. And this was due to a whole bunch of random testing I did on the side. Just for a few giggles, we're going to throw in the original design. Now, When I first built one of these, I tested way too much. I'm a little bit obsessive that way, but let's see if we reset the timer. This will set this for all of them to come on for 600 seconds, every single last one of them. So that way, if we check the... Oh, great, there's no automation overlay here. But gases-wise, they're all going to get shunted in. Each line should get an individual set of tanks to itself. Now, if each one of these was perfect and never stopped, you should get exactly, well, 600 kilos of oxygen in each one of these tanks, or each one of these rows. But that's not quite exactly what happens here. So let's just fast forward this until this goes all the way around. Well, this result sort of messed up all of my old testing. I think they must have improved the gas physics a lot since. If you check here in the gas tank, we got 149.4 kilos. And the same in the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. In other words, they're only short 0.6 of a kilo in each one of them. And that's, yeah, pretty much inside the margin of error. I mean, the fact that all of them are identical, I think, yeah, this is actually giving out exactly 3 kilos of oxygen per second. This one down here, unfortunately, came a little bit shy, 148.7, 119.3, and 89.9. I think more of the reasons for this is the settings on the Atmos sensors and the location of this Atmos sensor. The reason these Atmos sensors are all the way on the right side as opposed to the left, which would actually be closer to the automation port, is to do with how these gas pumps pull up gases. They draw gases from these 3 tiles here and these 3 tiles here. So this tile actually ends up very low pressured, while this one ends up higher pressured, so you're better off leaving the Atmos sensor over this side. That's why this one doesn't work so good. Also, since it's down in this sort of pit, it doesn't quite pull in as much hydrogen as it could, which also results in more problems. But when I was originally designing this design used to produce about 28 kilos of oxygen per, well, 2.8 kilos of oxygen per minute. And this one would produce about 2.96 or something like that. So this one produced slightly more because it had more of a vacuum cup. This, though, seems to be now the preferred method. Okay, so this is how I should be building my designs from now on. It goes to show you should go back and test these things every so often. This now has me thinking, how long have I been using the more inefficient design? I could have chopped 4 tiles off the top there and made this whole thing smoother and easier and simpler to fit in. Ah, well, you live and you learn. Since it was asked in the comments, we have 331 pacu sitting around in this little liquid tank. At the same time, we also have 38 fry eggs. Yeah, those infinitely reproducing fish that are giving us so much lime and so much food, yeah, kinda ridiculous, not gonna lie. One thing I feel like I should cover, or else it's gonna come up in the comments, is this type of electrolyzer design. This one here is called the Hydra. The reason for that is, well, okay, it's a 2-headed sucker. There's hydrogen up the top and oxygen on the left. Now, you can swap those, there's things you can do. But what you've done here is you've submerged this thing in liquids. A couple hundred kilos of salt water on the bottom, a couple hundred kilos of regular water on the top. Now, every time this tries to pop out gas, it forces the water out of the way. But the thing is, the hydrogen and oxygen that are coming out of it basically have to choose a side. And normally they'll just keep going in the same direction. So, for example, because there's oxygen over here, this keeps pushing all the oxygen out this side. And because there's hydrogen up here, that all gets shunted up to the top. But not only that, it doesn't do any pressure checks. So, as you can see here, this just keeps running flat out, even though there's 10 kilos of hydrogen up there and 37 kilos of oxygen over here. So this thing allows you to just keep an electrolyzer running flat out, take out the oxygen as you need it, take out the hydrogen as you need it. It's very handy for storing lots of hydrogen and oxygen. It's wonderful. You can look it up. There's a bunch of tutorials out there on it. Just personally, I don't like using this one because, well, it feels like it sort of defeats the purpose of using the electrolyzer. I kind of prefer these designs for, well, you have to deal with the products efficiently. If you don't, the hydrogen backs up and it, causes you problems, or the oxygen backs up. Just the backups on it and the problems they can cause and all of those catastrophic failures that can happen, I kind of like them. I'm not going to lie, those things sort of make things a lot more spicy. This one I can't really break down. As long as you keep feeding it water, you'll keep getting out hydrogen and you keep getting out oxygen. And it kind of, I don't know, it removes some of the fun for me. Very useful, though. If you're interested in using these sort of things, they are quite handy for doing hydrogen rockets and that sort of stuff. And just infinite storage in general. All right. Enough of that. I know I have to get around to designing a proper nuclear reactor to squeeze in here. Problem is, it's taking longer than I thought. I was supposed to get that episode out today, but there was no way. I'm going to need the weekend to design a proper one. Plus, I got to figure out where we're going to put our new electrolyzer setup. This 2 kilos of oxygen per second will support 20 duplicants. However, we're probably going to go above that at one point or other, so I'm thinking we're going to go in and install a full Rodriguez. So I'm thinking nuclear reactor down here, Rodriguez over there maybe, and it's going to be really awkward to squeeze in. You need to stick in about 10 steam turbines, and we're going to want the nuclear waste from that, and we're going to want to pump that up into space. we're going to need a lot of nuclear waste so that we can generate a lot of rads to actually make a lot of diamond to run a lot of drill cones so that we can mine resources from space. We need to mine those resources from space so we can knock out the achievement Mine the Gap. I've been advised this is the hardest achievement to get. 1,000 tons of resources from space means we're going to need so much diamond that we're going to need to actually create the diamond by compressing carbon, which is going to take an enormous amount of rads, which is why we have to build a nuclear reactor. And I'm almost tempted to try building a double reactor, even though the map is tiny. A double reactor would probably take up this much of the map. So, yeah, no, I'm going to have to do a bunch of designing over the weekend. Anyway, I'm going to cut this out here. I hope you enjoyed and good luck.